Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing well, and how are you?
Good. Welcome back, everybody, to another LinkedIn Live chat session. I'm Manish Patel from Tricky Water. Joining me because we liked it so much the first time, we decided to do another one. And because we liked it so much the second time, we decided to do a third one. And from our discussions leading up to this one, I know Tracy Kuhn and I are going to do probably a couple of more at least, and we might even have some guests in the future. But for the time being, we're hoping to make this one our best one yet. And to find out how good it'll be, um, please stay with us through the whole thing. And we've got let's say, I think, Tracy, we called it creepy surprise.
Absolutely.
But you have to stick with us to the end to see what that is. What we're here to talk about today is a subject that is top of mind for many people in a variety of industries, whether it's management consulting, whether it's supply chain, whether it's news generation. Unfortunately, um, Tracy and I are both in the creative space, and technology has been overwhelmingly dominant over the past, I'd say for sure, 10 years. And then with the advent of AI, right, the last few years, and then the last year, the acceleration of replacement of, let's just say, folks like us or folks adjacent to us has been quite impactful. And what we're here to talk about today is really a series of, you know, attempts that I've made. I would say I'm a Luddite in the world of AI for sure. I know this much, though, as Tracy and I will talk, you'll understand better that if we don't explore it and we don't use it, right, then we're going to get rolled over by it and it's going to go
Mhm.
past us. And so we're trying to avoid that and provide, some practical examples of real life uses. And Tracy's very well versed on some of the things that are more, let's say, academic on the use of AI in our branding marketing space, but also general business space. So just before, as usual, like I did last week, I'm going to present some of the, let's say, problems and some of the modest successes that I've experienced. And then we'll jump into Tracy's going to take us down the path of trying to figure all of this out and how do we use it more appropriately, effectively. Um, so let's see, we've got let's see, a couple of different things that showed up here. That's going to be part of the creepy thing. That's just
Little
a teaser.
teaser.
Uh, so here we go. Uh, this is a brand I have, apparel brand called Get No Kudos, launched sometime in the second quarter. And I did some photo and video shoots. So the girl on the left is really a beautiful girl, beautiful model who wore one of my t-shirts. As you can see, the branding prominently featured on the t-shirt. And I said, let me play around with AI and see if I put it on a different person, right? I said, a girl of a different demographic and background. So it generated something for me that was sort of okay, not great. But as you can tell, branding is important, right, to us in the world of branding. Well, it decided to rebrand me, which is not something I asked for. And there's a lot of history behind this in terms of my arguing with ChatGPT, which was the platform I use more. And I use the individual paid version just for full disclosure. And there are some things that you learn about the limitations of AI when you start having these discussions with it and prompting it to do things. Next was another version where the real fail is probably me standing crooked in a hoodie that I'll be launching soon, and ask
That
for
makes
it to
it
be placed.
interesting.
Yeah, that and ask for it to place that hoodie on someone again different, almost the same type of person as the other photo. Didn't do too bad a job. It changed the sizing a little bit from oversized to a little smaller. kind of kept the branding intact. So overall, I would say this would be considered a modest success, right? Um, then I just said, hey, my father, he passed away this year, and I, love the house that he built and renovated some 40 years ago or so. And I was playing around with things we could do with my mom and family. I said, why don't we try to come up with different designs? So that's the original house. That is a different take on it by AI, because I certainly am not able to render anything like this by myself. Of course, in northern New Jersey, we don't really find those palm trees and that type of vegetation too often. But not a bad job in taking the same space and square footage and turning it into a different design. This was more traditional for the environment. Looks almost realistic, a realistic possibility. And then last but not least, my father was an architect, so he was a big fan of minimalism, and certainly, I'm sure at some point in time would have considered something that was inspired by a mid-century modern approach. So anyway, I'd consider that a success, and a lot of what I consider to be the beneficial aspect of AI has to do with being able to do things at a conceptual level, because as Tracy will talk, I'll chime in a little bit about where I feel AI is and where the limitations and gaps are, and where the cautionary tales are. But I've said enough now. Tracy, if you could kind of fix my mess that I created with all those different AI prompts and lead us to the correct solution.
Yeah, like I think that, rendering of the jackets where you've got you like kind of hanging out crooked, that was the most interesting visual between the two of them because it's human, it's interesting, it's a little strange, it's out there, it's unexpected. Where both models that were AI generated were very stiff, very flat looking. And I know a lot of this gets solved in the prompting and the tools that we use, but honestly, the human stuff was what stood out. And I haven't cracked the code yet on AI visuals. And I know there's people who are, killing it with making Amazon content, for example, creating automations where they're getting like product images and, below the fold images and stuff that are, accurate. And I've been exploring a tool called Mockup Labs, which I'm hoping can make some of this stuff a little bit easier. But a lot of it's in the prompting and yeah, how do we get those AI generated models to look more interesting and less stiff, less flat?
And to your point, what I have been doing is using AI predominantly for writing, because I write like it. Because I'm an engineer, I write like one, and I take a lot of my original thoughts, which you'll see here on the left. Right, I wrote something about the Amazon Web Services issue the other day,
Mm.
and I asked ChatGPT to take some of my thoughts, and there were a couple of iterations in between, and expand on them and organize them, so that was a little better presented. But I enjoy it. I like it for that. I find it useful, but I don't ask it to like, hey, write me a book about this. I believe the best guidance is put as much into it as you can, because otherwise it's going to take a lot of degrees of freedom and create its own version of you, which ultimately, as Tracy just said, we don't want a version of you that's not representative of your original and your original ideas and thoughts. So again, Tracy, go ahead there.
Yeah, and I have a lot of thoughts about AI for writing because we're all seeing so much of it, especially on LinkedIn and in blogs. So, a company called Graphite did an interesting study that was released recently that showed how AI generated content on the internet had surpassed human content at one point and then plateaued. And the idea was everyone's seeing AI tools as a way to create content quickly. But unfortunately, all that content, it did not result in lift to these companies' websites. So they were not getting the expected SEO lift or engagement. The browsers recognize the AI content, and it's the human stuff that's actually stood out. And as I'm seeing so much AI generated content, especially on LinkedIn and in blogs, I'm noticing a sameness where the perfection and the polish, where we have everything's applied Everything's applying to the same frameworks, perfect grammar, polished copy, and after a while it gets boring. So I would caution people that if we're using AI tools for writing, don't if you're doing creative writing, just write it yourself. You can use AI to proofread it, look for your good hooks, and then do the rewriting yourself. It can be a great way to test your audience, and you can give it a role and say, "Hey, pretend you're a bunch of CMOs looking at this LinkedIn post. How do they receive it?" And you can check blind spots that way. But as far as actual creative writing, I definitely recommend more human input, the better, because people respond to things that stand out. Like we notice this as, advertising nerds. Like we see those campaigns that are just stellar because they're weird, they stand out. AI is great at pattern recognition, and it's got this vast database. So it's crunching this database, looking for the patterns, and then it's averaging out an output. Now, if you're really good at prompting, you can prompt something super creative out of that. But if you're just kind of average playing with it and you don't really know what good looks like because maybe you're not a copywriter by trade, you don't know how to recognize what good looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I still love that example you shared last week with everyone. And folks, if you want to see it, you can watch the second episode. But it was not AI related; it was more related to just humor and advertising. But how the NHL partnered with KFC, and Colonel Sanders lost his teeth. KFC Canada, as it so appeared. And it was just such a brilliant ad. And even if the graphics, right, could have been generated by AI, no doubt,
Hmm.
the idea itself is not something that could come out of a machine, simply because of the level of detail, right? To show the imperfection of Colonel Sanders through an accident, through a series of mishaps that result in him losing his tooth for the NHL. So I think
Exactly.
that speaks to the human element here in writing, right? If you decide to take an idea and say, write me a script, you will be able to spot it from a mile away. In fact, that little writing example I showed you, typically I'll get a writing result and then I'll go in and edit it because I
Hmm.
still find things that are not me. And I
Yep.
recommend that for everyone because Tracy just said it. It is all recognized as being somehow artificially generated, and everything starts looking alike when it's unoriginal thought.
And you notice the same frameworks. There's a lot of, especially in LinkedIn posts, it's not this, it's that. And you just substitute, the words there. But humans create what's original, AI creates what's scalable. So I feel like when you put the two of us together, the human originality and creativity with the AI acceleration, then that's a good combination.
I mean, I think it's a combination of things that there are words that get picked up. I don't remember
Mhm.
what show it was I was watching, but it was a professor collecting papers from students, right? And the professor immediately identified which papers were AI and realized that the whole class had submitted papers that were AI, at least
Mhm.
not totally generated, but at least recognizable enough that they figured out, oh, and now there's tools too, of course, right? There's a lot of plagiarism tools
Yeah.
out there that have existed for a while. Well, now those plagiarism tools have stepped up their game and are recognizing AI. And so there's a lot. It's the wild, wild west right now. I mean,
It really
we're
is.
not
There's so much out there.
we're not even talking about the complications of it, but again, the little example I'm going to give you at the end, right? I'll explain in greater detail some of the pitfalls that do exist for AI, and among them is going to be the financial case for it in the long run, because right
Mhm.
now there's irrational exuberance around it. People are buying hardware. People are constructing buildings to house that hardware, and everyone is getting funded, and they're funding each other, and they're buying each other. It reminds me a lot of when I was in the fiber optic business in the early 2000s and witnessed the dot-com bubble go from from bottom to peak to less than bottom. We actually went from 70 employees at one place I was at to 1,200 down to 30 by the time I exited. So I unfortunately see the same thing happening with AI, because a lot of the parallels exist where everything that the hardware, as I mentioned, all the construction is all being done at a premium right now. But at some point, that money's going to dry up. And the question
Mhm.
is, the fees that, like, for instance, I pay for an individual license, or you pay for individual licenses, or to try things out, those fees are going to dry up at some point, because
Mhm.
you can't sustain something you do once. Like, I'm not willing to pay that monthly, because that's just too
Right.
much money. And the business model that's on the other end is expecting that type of revenue monthly. So how do we? So I think, again, with this, leads us back to, how do we use it, right, as individuals, as maybe small entrepreneurs especially, but this applies to any business really. You just scale up what Tracy and I do, and how do you do it economically, and in a way that is sustainable for our business. And then the people outside who are selling these services or these platforms are going to have to watch us really closely, because I think they're not watching that at all. They're just working on, like, how do we replace people, and how do we just continue to enhance the content. And then they're going to realize, like, well, we've got Fabergé eggs here, but no one can afford these Fabergé eggs.
Right. And at some point, it's just going to implode on itself because, I mean, we see it with what's happening with Perplexity and Reddit. Like Reddit is suing Perplexity because they've been accessing Reddit data for training without paying for it or without permission. And the AI tools need that original content to stay, up to date and to stay original somewhat. And if we don't have enough human content to keep feeding the beast, it's just going to keep reiterating upon itself, and I feel like it's going to implode. So I feel like there's still a need for human creativity, and as people start to realize that the AI content, when it's not fully with a human in the loop, it's not getting the results that they want. There's going to be demand for human creators. Now, going back to the writing, I have not been impressed yet with any of the major AI platforms' ability to write in my own voice. And I cheat a little bit because I've been writing copy since my career began. But I learned of a new tool called Spiral. So I'm curious if that's going to crack the code on writing to sound like us. So I'm going to be experimenting with that. Manish, if you want to give it a try, it's Spiral. I just learned about it today, but maybe we can do a
Well,
follow
I
up and see if we got good results from that.
Yeah, and one of the things, I know, Tracy, you always share new platforms with me. And what we're learning is, in AI, and if you go, like, even within ChatGPT, ChatGPT is not in and of itself a one-stop shop, right? Or a one-stop solution. There are many GPTs under that they use for different verticals, like writing,
Mhm.
like video, music, different types of writing, architectural, right? So that's a good thing, right? That's a good evolution, because what it does is it'll make the right people, connect the right people developing the right product for your specific need, as opposed to somebody who's trying to be the Amazon of Amazon Basics, or whatever, the Kirkland, that does everything, right?
Yeah,
From tomato sauce to whiskey to pajamas. Like,
right.
that always, sometimes, I guess Costco's been able to pull that off pretty well. But the reality is, they really have to have the right people and the right products aligned to give us the best, end product. And so, as Tracy just mentioned here, a tool like Spiral is out there to help navigate writing specifically. So I'll definitely check it out. But and I know other people, for instance, because of work restrictions, right? They're not allowed to use certain AIs in their work environment, and their company has made license agreements, whether it's with Microsoft or some other platform, to be able to use it at work, because of obvious security concerns that they might have. And so that's always a good place. Ask other people what they're using at their workplace, because more often than not, you'll find out that a lot of people are not using ChatGPT at work. They're using other things.
Mhm. Or if they did like the last company I was working for, we had like a chat GPT Lite that was embedded in a chatbot, like a Microsoft chatbot. It did not have the memory. There was not much we can do with it. So at the time, I was not that impressed. But I was also looking into a tool like Jasper AI, which is like an enterprise wide tool that would have helped create content, campaigns, even like analyze performance on a website, social media, and then pull it all together to make solid data driven recommendations. And what I liked about that was it did have, I guess, like a sandbox, like where all of your input is secure. It's not going out into like the web and training other models or being accessed by other people using the same tool, which is what you risk with some of these publicly available tools. Is like we're putting stuff into it and it goes into the wide database that everyone else is training on and doing research with. So I was pretty impressed with Jasper as a tool to like kind of overcome that.
Yeah, and another third-party tool, as you'll learn from my creepy example before we sign off here, is ChatGPT. Their video path, their video GPT, actually created a prompt for me off of my prompt, and then sent me off to another AI product called InVideo. And
Nice.
InVideo, in turn, while I'm already paying ChatGPT, this was a unexpected and unpleasant surprise, asked me to pay another fee to finish my project, which
Hmm.
obviously was a unexpected, unpleasant surprise. But I was able to go back into ChatGPT and update the prompt and say I don't want to pay anymore because I'm paying you guys already. And that's where the business model comes into play, right? Like
Right.
I can't afford to pay multiple platforms, for one result. And so that's something all these guys are going to have to
Mhm.
fight it out with each other and determine who's going to be able to keep the customer and also who's going to be able to deliver, the right content. And again, I love your example of the Spiral AI tool
Mhm.
because it's very vertical, very specialized. I've
Right.
seen platforms like that in the legal space because obviously there's a ton of content and writing in the legal space. And of course, there's privacy issues there as well. I think there's ample opportunity with medical data
Absolutely.
and in those areas. But again, getting back to our space in the branding and marketing area, I'm going to say that the results we're getting are like 70%. I think from what you saw, what I shared there, are about 70% what you want. And
Mhm.
you'd certainly like to achieve more to close that gap. But that's also good for you and me, Tracy, and people like us, because that's our value is closing that gap and getting a human
Right.
result.
And when you pull up that slide where I have like the tools that I love, so I want to share with everyone some tools that I've been working with all year. And yeah, there's so many new tools and platforms that come out there. I've subscribed to many. I probably use about half of them now, but I recommend if you haven't heard of them, Gamma. They create slides, and you can have a workflow where you're creating, information in ChatGPT. Maybe you're working on a proposal for a client, and you want to ship that off and make a nice, pretty looking deck, and then not spend a lot of time on it. So you can have your proposal built in ChatGPT, prompt ChatGPT to deliver markdown text suitable to output into Gamma. Then you copy that text, load it into Gamma, and Gamma will generate slides for you. And it will keep your text either exact or it will like AI rewrite. So if you want things more condensed or like different tone, it can change that. And you can also have branding so that way your Gamma slides are always on brand. So any of us have been stuck in PowerPoint hell, this tool is a lifesaver. You're going to love it. I also use Opus Clips. It's nice to have like what we're doing here. Like we're talking and we can probably get some great little snippets out of this. Opus Clips will take your long form videos, analyze it for your hook, what's on trend, and then it will generate snippets based on how long you want them to be. It can apply branding, it can have captions, you can put a logo on it, and then it will output different formats. So if you want the horizontal, square, and portrait, you can get all of that. So that is a super useful time saver for getting video clips. And of course, ChatGPT, which is awesome for just all purpose stuff. I use the custom GPTs extensively and the project folders, which have two different functions but work very well together. Perplexity, just for doing research, super powerful. And then Otter AI for meeting transcripts. And then Zapier, I'm still learning. I haven't perfected my Zaps yet, but I know there's a way to get automation down using a Zapier connected to like all my different other platforms. So I'll keep everyone posted on progress there.
And I use MailChimp for some email marketing, and MailChimp offers some AI design tools, which again, as you mentioned earlier, branded design tools. So you can update your brand kit, your brand toolkit into MailChimp, and then it provides you a nicely formatted email, or at least options. I mean, I haven't found one yet where I'm like, okay, this is it, set to go. I still make changes, right? Because I still want to
Yeah.
humanize and personalize what I'm delivering. So that's an option. So within many tools, of course, whether it's Microsoft Office, whether it's Google through Gemini, there are so many tools out there built into traditional products that we use
Mhm.
that are useful for specific reasons in the AI world. Of course, Microsoft has a variety of tools, but
Yeah.
it's all right there at your fingertips. Some places I've resisted on using AI because I just don't want to get down another rabbit hole that could be, as I've found, a little bit more of a time suck than I want or than I can handle myself. So I appreciate the tools, Tracy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's go to the next slide too, because I'll talk about some tools that now I'm exploring. So there's three that I want to check out. We talked about Spiral. There's also one called Hyperlink Local AI. This is supposed to be an AI that's embedded on your local computer, and it doesn't share anything externally, but it looks through all of your local files. So if you have search questions on all the crap that's in your computer, it's supposed to be able to go through it all and retrieve answers. So I'm curious to see if this is going to be a good productivity tool as I'm, instead of like hunting for files manually through different folders, maybe I can ask this hyperlink to check things out and deliver summaries and all that for you. And then we talked a little bit about the mock-up labs. So I've done a lot of work with e-commerce, and I really want to figure out how I can crack the code on creating e-commerce images that are consistent, on brand, with no mistakes. We don't want them to redo the logo like what happened to you at the Get No Kudos. So I'm gonna be experimenting with the mock-up labs. And then one more slide. So we've been hearing a lot about people wanting to kind of put the brakes on AI, but with great power comes great responsibility for anyone who's a comic book nerd. So I feel like we've got this powerful tool. It can be dangerous, it can be a little scary. In fact, Texas A&M did a study where they learned that LLM models, large language models that were fed viral content, actually lost cognitive ability and developed symptoms of being psychopaths. So pretty interesting. So they're very powerful tools that we're working with. So we just have to be mindful that we have the right ethics, that we have guardrails, that we understand how they work and how we're working with them. It doesn't mean we should get rid of the tools, but like let's just make sure we're using them wisely to get the most out of it safely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very important point you're making there, which is kind of where we started, right?
Mhm.
With anything new comes a lot of responsibility, using it correctly and appropriately. You know, also as a business leader, it also is a balance of like, okay, how do I remain competitive, right? By using
Right.
these tools. And I don't know, as an ethicist, which I think you and I both kind of fall into that category too. Like, how do I keep people employed and do things,
Yeah.
that are still gonna keep the machine of humans operating at their peak levels? I mean, there are some things like Mark Cuban, I think, came out this like I can never figure the guy out other than the fact he's really rich. But he came out this week saying, he's told his kids that they need to learn AI, and AI is where obviously he's said it numerous times. Other people have too. Is AI is obviously the future, and you really need to learn AI because there's going to be nothing else. And I'm like, Mark, I tell you, a piece of advice I try to give my son. I know my son was maybe yeah, go get your degree, but also learn plumbing and electrical, because I guarantee this much: AI is not gonna unclog the toilet as best as
Right.
I can tell right now. Maybe a robot might, but AI itself will not do what Tracy and I are very familiar with from our days at American Standard in dealing with plumbing. There are some things that you just can't fix,
Yeah.
probably, and so there's a range, right, of like skill sets that we're gonna have to have people learn, and somewhere there's moderation in all places that provide responsible, use. And there's our emails are at the bottom, by the way. Tracy.Kuhn at Foxfire and Company, and Manisha Trickywater, because we presented a lot of information here. Tracy presented, like, I don't know, 8 or 10 different applications, some not even listed, maybe 10 places that you can go. I presented one or two, and we can help you navigate those applications for your business, especially if you're a smaller business that doesn't have like the budget or resources to chase everything down or hire a full-time specialist. That's kind of what we do, right? We kind of fit the need
Yeah.
of a specific type of business and help them,
Onboarding.
yeah, help them use these tools, right?
Right. And
Um,
like one of the biggest things people run into is they don't know how they know they need AI, but they don't know how. And we can help with like how do you capture those SOPs, your standing operating procedures, and just like the day-to-day work that the team does, and then how AI tools can fit to accelerate and support those teams.
Without reinventing the wheel, because again, if
Exactly.
your budget is limited, the last thing you want to do is pay someone to create an AI tool for you when there are so many tools out there. And I know we are running into more and more every day. In fact, in the time that we have been doing this session right now, we're probably experiencing changes already in the things that we discussed, right? That's how
Mhm.
fast it's moving, and that's just the nature of how things go. But
Right.
that's kind of like a high level discussion on AI. Again, not a very detailed technical speech because we can do that more one on one with you, and more focused based on your needs.
Right. So you promised us a fun video.
Well, I don't know if it's fun. I know, my family didn't think it was fun. I think they thought, as we said, it was creepy. That was the review. So this is a picture from 2008 with my kids, right? I'm sure, fortunately, they're probably not watching this, and they would find it quite embarrassing that I'm sharing this, but it's one of my favorite pictures with them as they were younger, many years ago, 17 years ago. And so I did something with AI today, and it was a quite a journey through ChatGPT and this other tool called InVideo. It was frustrating at times, and it cost more than I had originally even thought. I thought it would cost zero. And anything above zero means it costs more than I had expected. But I figured I'd try it just again. If we don't explore some of these things, then they kind of sneak past you, right? So here's as promised, right? This is what ended up coming out of it, right? Of course, we didn't have a video camera that day, and my kids again were absolutely shocked by this result. But as you can tell, it's as scary and creepy as it is amazing that this was generated in a pretty short order of time that you probably can do using traditional CGI, but it's totally inaccurate. And as my family members mentioned, it's wholly inaccurate and very creepy, right?
Mhm.
But there are places to use it. Sad to say, but if you misuse it, you end up with me and a beard, right? Which I've never had in my life. So if you watch this video closely, there are some shots where you actually see me with a full beard, and obviously they use someone else's head on my body at that time. And so if you misuse AI, right, is I guess the point, you're going to end up with me and a beard. And I don't like that. And so what we need to do is, focus on the results, double check those results. Whatever you put into it is the original data. What you get out of it may or may not be, accurate. Check it. I've
Ex-
done things with numbers. I've done things with spreadsheets just to test AI, and I found errors. And errors can be costly, especially if you decide I'm going to use it for a financial reporting tool, as a financial reporting tool, or something to analyze an annual report. I've done all those, and I've found that there are mistakes that happen. Fortunately, if you do your homework right, which is where Tracy and I come in, the humans, right? You can avoid those errors, embarrassing errors at times, and potentially critical. Tracy, what do you
Mhm.
want to leave us with?
I fully agree with that because AI will do exactly what you tell it to do, and that includes the stuff that you omit. So when you're prompting, I can't stress enough that you have to give it clear instructions, give it a role, give it context, give it guidelines, give it examples. And even with all that, you still need to check the work and you learn as you go. Like I've been working on different prompts where I'm not getting good results, and I'll actually ask the tool, like, "Hey, evaluate this chat. Tell me how I can make this better," and it would generate a meta prompt that I can then reiterate, try again, test and fail, and then reiterate again. So it's a continuous process of improving how you prompt and how you use these tools so you can get better results.
Yeah, it's in Six Sigma. I won't make it much longer, but what Tracy just described is, your operational instructions, right? And there are you have to be very specific, and they have to be quite discreet, closed-ended, like leave very little room for doubt. Because the less precise you are, the more open-ended it is. And I probably should have said, like, don't change my face at all, right? Don't add a beard. Just again, I'm bringing up a very specific example, but AI doesn't also listen to some of those instructions, as you will learn. And again, reach out to Tracy or myself here on LinkedIn, through a comment on YouTube, wherever you find this. Direct message us, and would love to have a deeper dive and conversation about how, just any questions you have about what we've experienced. Certainly, I am a Luddite, as I said, a novice, you name it. I'm that in the space of AI, but I'm using it just enough to be dangerous, and I think helpful as well. And Tracy's far more adept at talking about it from an academic perspective too. So thanks again, everyone, and appreciate your. Hope you enjoyed the creepy ending we showed. And so we'll see you next time, probably in about 2 weeks. Thanks
All
a
right.
lot. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye, all.
Bye.